The day started like any other. The sun peeked through the kitchen curtains as I helped Mia adjust her little pink hearing aid. At just 9 years old, she had already survived more than most adults ever would. Born partially deaf and with a neurological condition that made her slower to process information, Mia's life had been filled with therapy sessions, hospital visits, and whispered worries about whether she would ever keep up in a world that moved too fast. But to me, she was perfect. "You've got this, sweetheart," I said, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. "Just listen carefully and take your time." "I will, Mama," she signed back with a shy smile. Her new teacher, Mr. Grant, had been recommended as firm but excellent. At the parent-teacher conference, he'd looked me in the eye and said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Ramirez. I'll treat her like my own." I had believed him. It wasn't until noon that the call came. "You need to come to the school right away," the voice on the other end said, trembling. "There's been an incident." The drive felt endless, every red light a fresh wave of panic. When I arrived, my worst nightmare was waiting for me. Police cars littered the parking lot. Teachers stood in a tight circle, their faces pale. And there, on a stretcher being wheeled toward an ambulance, was Mia. Her small frame looked impossibly still. Her shirt was soaked in blood, her pale fingers dangling limply at her side. "Mia!" I screamed, running forward, but a police officer grabbed my arms. "Ma'am, please stay back," he said firmly. "What happened?" "That's my baby. What happened?" I cried, my voice breaking. "Your daughter's been shot," the officer said grimly. "She's alive, but critical." The words didn't make sense. Shot? In her school? Who did this? I demanded, my hands trembling. The officer's jaw tightened. Her teacher, Mr. Grant. He claimed she wasn't paying attention in class, and he snapped. I felt the air leave my lungs as my knees gave out. My baby, my sweet, gentle Mia, was paying for an adult's cruelty. "Mama?" Her voice came faintly from the stretcher. "I'm here, baby. Stay with me," I whispered, clutching her hand as the paramedics worked frantically. I climbed into the ambulance, refusing to let go of her. My heart hammered as I looked back one last time and saw Mr. Grant standing in handcuffs, his expression unreadable. "You're going to regret this," I swore under my breath. "You just started a war." The sirens screamed as we sped toward the hospital. The hospital lights were harsh, cold, and sterile, nothing like the warm glow of home where Mia should have been that afternoon. I sat beside her bed, gripping her tiny hand as machines beeped steadily around us. Her face was pale, her chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. The surgeons had removed the bullet from her side, but the damage was severe. One lung had collapsed, and her fragile body was fighting to stay alive. "You're strong, baby girl," I whispered, brushing her hair back gently. "You've been fighting since the day you were born. Don't stop now." I couldn't stop replaying the officer's words in my head. Her teacher. He claimed she wasn't paying attention and snapped. How could someone entrusted with shaping young minds pull a gun on my child, because she forgot an answer? When the officers came to take my statement, I could barely contain my fury. "Mr. Grant is in custody," one of them said. "We'll be pushing for attempted murder charges." "That's not enough." I shot back, my voice trembling but cold. "He aimed that gun. He chose to pull the trigger. I won't rest until he's behind bars for life." The officer nodded solemnly. "We'll make sure justice is served." But I wasn't satisfied with promises. I knew how easily people like him, respected, connected, slipped through cracks in the system. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not to Mia. I looked down at my daughter, her small fingers twitching slightly in her sleep. "You heal, baby," I whispered. "Mama's going to take care of the rest." The next morning, Mia's story exploded across the news. Elementary teacher shoots disabled girl over forgotten lesson, read the scrolling headline. Parents gathered outside the school, holding signs and demanding justice. "Protect our children," one read. "Justice for Mia," another declared in bold red letters. "This is unforgivable," a neighbor told a reporter. "We trusted him with our kids." At the hospital, Mia stirred awake. Her eyelids fluttered as I clutched her hand. "Mama," she rasped, her voice weak. I'm here, sweetheart, I said softly, tears blurring my vision. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. Did I do bad? She whispered. No, baby, you did nothing wrong. You're perfect. He's the one who's bad, and he'll never get near you again. But as much as I reassured her, I knew our fight wasn't over. The man who had done this still hadn't faced real consequences, and I was going to make sure he did. 3 months later, I walked into the courtroom holding Mia's hand. She still wore a bandage on her side, but she stood tall beside me, her hearing aid glinting in the light. Mr. Grant sat at the defense table, looking smaller than I remembered. His once proud posture was gone, replaced with a slouch and darting eyes. My client deeply regrets what happened, his lawyer said to the jury. This was a momentary lapse in judgment, a tragic accident. Accident? I hissed under my breath. When I took the stand, I spoke with every ounce of strength in my body. My daughter was born fighting for her life, I said, my voice steady, and she's been fighting ever since. This man took a gun into a classroom and shot her because she needed a little extra time to answer. That's not an accident. That's evil. The prosecutor laid out damning evidence, the premeditated way Grant had drawn his weapon, the way he aimed it deliberately, and the witnesses who said he'd screamed at Mia moments before pulling the trigger. The jury's faces hardened with every word. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts, the foreman announced. Mr. Grant's face crumpled as the judge spoke. You are a danger to every child in your care. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside, reporters crowded around me. How is Mia? One asked. She's still recovering, I said, holding her hand tightly. But she's stronger than anyone I've ever met. And now she knows evil doesn't win. Not this time. Mia looked up at me with tired eyes. He can't hurt us now, she asked softly. No, baby, I said, hugging her close. He'll never hurt anyone again. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight begin to lift. We still had a long road ahead, but at least we were walking it together.